Aloha, and welcome to the Sylvan Bell Business Growth and Exit Strategy Podcast, your guide to building companies that command maximum multiples. I'm Sylvan Bell, author of 5 books on business strategy and sales, creator of the Sell Framework, Scale Framework, and Driver Test. I work with owners of $10 million to $250 million companies, whether you're scaling for growth or positioning for a profitable exit. Each episode breaks down one framework, strategy, or concept you can apply this week to grow revenue systematically, scale operations, and maximize enterprise value. Let's get started. Welcome to episode number 38, the Bench Framework, Leadership Depth in 40 Points. Today, we are working within the Exit Ratio 360 system, and Bench stands for Bench Depth, Employment Security, Next in Line Readiness, Concentration Risk, Human Capital Systems. When somebody comes to buy your company, your practice, your offer, they're not buying the founders. They're buying the team. And if your bench is thin, your multiple gets thin right along with it. That's not good. I want to start with this core thesis. Leadership depth isn't about headcount. It is the measurable ability of your team to run the business, make real quantifiable decisions, and defend the numbers without looking at you. And the 40 points in the bench framework determine whether a buyer sees you as an organization or a one-person show with employees. You don't want to be the one-person show with employees. You want the proof that you have the bench to take the team where it needs to go without you. When it comes to somebody purchasing your office, your practice, your business, one of the things that happens is in the LOI, they may say, hey, we want to talk to your management team. We want to meet with them. We want to have a conversation. But here's the thing, we don't want you in the room. You need to know that this happens. And that meeting is their version of a bench test. And nothing is off the record. This really is to validate, hey, can this team run this company without the founder, without the owner, without the El Presidente? Can they make the magic happen without him or her? And they're going to say, hey, we want to sit down. We're going to meet with them separately. We just want to get their perspective. And they're running an evaluation. They're running a red team exercise live with your team. And they're going to start asking questions. Hey, tell me about the financials. Tell me about the standard operating procedures. Tell me about the org chart. Tell me about what happens when the owner's not around. Tell me about how often the owner isn't around. And what they're going to do in a lot of these situations is they're going to validate what you have told them. They're going to say, hey, how real was the owner when they shared all this information with us? And if your team freezes too much, hedges too much, or defers, like, I'll have to check and get back to you, the buyer is scoring your bench in real time, and the score is not going to be good. Like in the background, they're thinking, okay, we got a ding here, we've got a dent here, and this is a full-on car crash. This is a problem. This can take you from an A+ Titan deal to a B or a C level deal, and you're not going to get the maximum multiple that you could. I want to start by defining the problem for you. Bench carries 40 points inside of the Exit Ratio 360, and it measures one thing. Can your business retain its value after you leave? Not a 2-year transition, after you leave. So here's your diagnostic. Picture your top 3 leaders in a room in a sophisticated buyers asking them pointed questions about your strategy, financials, ops, and growth. No script, no prep from you, no rescue. How's that meeting going? Where are they struggling? These are the places where you can start with the opportunity to have the conversations. Like in your mind, you're like, okay, we've got an ops issue. We need to have an ops conversation. Okay, we've got a financials issue. We need to have a financials conversation. Okay, we've got too many revenues per employee. We got to have a general management conversation. And, if it comes down and your answer is, it depends upon the questions, your bench score might be lower than you thought because a buyer's questions won't be the ones that your team is comfortable asking. They're going to throw them curveballs. And you want them to be prepared. And this is why you really want to prepare 5, 4, 3, 2 years out and get your team on a cadence where they're looking at KPIs consistently and they know their numbers backwards and forwards and they know where they came from and they know where they can retrieve them. I benefited from being on a team where the manager said, hey, listen, if we're going to meet at 9, which we did, all of your numbers have to be in by 7:30. Right? I don't want you putting your numbers in late. And then we had to defend the positions. We had to know our numbers backwards and forwards. And if something wasn't answered right, we were called out. I hated it when I went through it, but I benefited greatly and said, hey, this is one of the things that I admired about the general manager that I worked under is the structure that he put in place allowed us to have to be good at what we did, allowed us to have to be good at our jobs and know our numbers. And so when people would come in, because we would have on-site visits, it wasn't uncommon at least once a month to have a company come in and watch our stand-up or our daily huddle, whatever you want to call it. And one of the managers, the owners from another company would say, "Hey, what did you just go over? How did you get that information?" And it was the role and responsibility of that manager, that team lead, to be able to answer that question. There were 16 managers on the team. And at any given time, somebody could say, like, "I need to know how you got that number, because like I'm not from your organization." And what it did is it put us all on our toes. And so when you're 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, 2 years out, you have the ability to start prepping your team. Like, we're gonna go through a red team exercise. You better know your numbers backwards and forwards. You have to defend them. Oh, and by the way, I can't be in the room to help you. Or, oh, by the way, I can't let you have anybody pull that information for you. We had to pull all of our own information. We weren't allowed to have anybody else pull it. We had to train somebody in case we were out and we were sick. But those numbers were relied upon by us, and we had to, like, yeah, I pulled that. And if somebody on the team pulled a number, had their assistant pull the number, they had to say, "I didn't pull the numbers today. I had somebody else pull them." And they were put under more scrutiny. We got to talk about the tough conversation where the problem hides. There's two zones that feed each other. The first is Black Box Bob, the manager who hoards information for his job security, or Black Box Betty who hoards information for her security. They know every client. They know every relationship, every pricing exception, every vendor deal, and none of it's in writing, because Bob's or Betty's value depends upon being the one who knows. Bob and Betty, they're not being malicious. They're rational. If the information transfers, that person, Bob or Betty, becomes replaceable, and they know it. So the second is Protective Pete or Protective Penelope. They hoard different information entirely. It's not job security, but it's anxiety and genuine care for you and the company. They don't delegate because they don't trust anybody. They don't give information because they don't trust anybody. So it holds the team back. The impact for you is going to come down to transferability. They're similar problems. They have similar issues. But at the end of the day, you're blocking your ability to have your company to be transferred to somebody else. Both these people, both these teams will hold information until you pry it away from them. The impact that you have when you are able to achieve the information allows for you to get momentum. And they know this. So I'm going to let you know. It's going to come down to 3 conversations. 1, you're going to have to change, and they change. I'm going to let you know it happens, but the odds are slim. 2, I have seen this. I'm not saying I agree with it. I've seen companies to pay Black Box Bob, Black Box Betty to not come into the office anymore. Okay? I've seen them do it with Protective Pete and Protective Penelope as well. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm saying it's a maneuver. It's a move that you can use. It's a move that you could use. In due diligence, these are billboard-sized red flags or building-sized red flags. Somebody who's not on the team to transfer information is a major problem. Now, what do you do about it? You start slow. Like, I'll have conversations with founders, business owners, and I'll say, "Hey, who on your team is Black Box Bob or Black Box Betty?" And then who on the team is Protective Pete, Protective Penelope? Could be the same person. They could be everybody wrapped up into one. And the conversation goes like this. Like, they took some time to be in this position. You need to take a little bit of time to work yourself out of it. You need to come up with a strategy of how you're going to gain the intel, right? And one of those ways, once again, there's a lot of different ways to do this. One of the ways to do this is to buy them a vacation. Hey, you're a hard worker. We bought you a vacation. Thanks for doing awesome. I've seen this happen where an event is rigged inside of the company, and Black Box Bob, Black Box Betty, Protective Pete, or Protective Penelope, they win. It's staged. And then the office, but you've only got this once. You've only got one opportunity to do this, okay? So the office goes to them and says, "Hey, you won. We need to get somebody up to speed on what you're doing." And they're going to be suspicious because that's their nature. They're going to give you about 50 to 60% of the information. And then while they're gone, what you're going to do is you're going to get the rest of the team to help fill you in on what's going on. Is this the perfect way of doing it? No. But you're not dealing with a perfect scenario. You're not dealing with a situation that's going to be easy. Now, on this list, number 3 is to just completely let them go. Try to get the information, try to work with them, try to do everything you can. But once again, I'm not a doctor, attorney, marriage counselor, or therapist. You may need to talk to some qualified help for this because this may become a legal issue. But Black Box Bob, Black Box Betty, protected Pete, protected Penelope, 5 years, 4 years, 3 years out, 2 years out, gives you time. It gives you room to maneuver. It's when people come to me like, hey, Scott, I want to sell in 6 months. I'm like, you can do it. You're not going to get anywhere near your maximum multiple. Your company's going to go up on a discount, and you just got to be aware of this. So you're going to want to take some time to strategize and figure out a game plan and say, hey, how do we get the SOPs out of these people? How do we figure out what the relationships are? How do we get somebody to get transferred? Now, one last thing on protected Pete, protected Penelope, black box Bob, black box Betty. When you hire somebody to work alongside of them, they will sabotage that deal. They will smile and nod like, I'm here to help. I will give every bit of help that I can. And as they say that, they're shaking their head no, right? I will give you every single bit of help. If you can't see me, I'm shaking my head no. I will give you every single bit of help that I can to help you. No, you're not, right? They're not going to do it. That's against their nature. They got you to a point in your business to where you are, but now they're hamstringing you. I was going to say hampering. They're hamstringing you. And part of the process is to get the information out of them. So you say, hey, Scott, how in the world do buyers detect this? How do they know? Like, if you've done deals long enough, you're going to pick up on clues, subtle clues. They're going to happen in conversations. What is and isn't said. It's going to happen in body language, maneuvers. It's going to be who looks at the owner, who looks at a manager, who consistently says they don't know the answer to the question. And what is happening in due diligence is they're looking at key person dependability. Who on the team can we transfer this knowledge to? Because we're not sticking around inside of the building, right? We are above the business. That's the rule that private equity and private investors use. They're like, we are going to bring a management team in and we're going to manage. Now, I like to bring this up because it's super important and you need to know this. If you don't make these changes, an investor is going to 6 months or 12 months after you leave. So there's going to be a period of time for your holdback. Let's say it's 6 months. And you have things that need to occur, metrics that need to occur. And it's 6 months and 1 day when your term is over. They're going to go in and they're going to look at the management team and they're going to say who stays and who goes. But they've already known this information. But they're going to come in and they're going to say, here's who stays and here's who goes. Because they didn't cut the mustard. They didn't have the skills, talents, or capabilities to be there. And so either you can benefit from getting a maximum or maximumer multiple, like I'm trying to make up a word here, or they're going to benefit and buy you at a discount. Either way, you're going to pay. You might as well get the way that gets you paid the most. You want the buyer to be impressed. You want them to be like, man, this team's on it. They got the skills, talents, and capabilities. And when you have a strong, solid bench score, you're not guessing. You know for a fact. We got to talk about the cost. There's a valuation penalty. A thin bench changes the deal in ways that you may not consider. So I'm going to give you one version of this. And it's the obvious hit for the multiple. You were going to get a multiple of 6. You don't have the team that you need. You go to the table. They start at a 3 and you end up at a 4. So this is real money. This is real retirement. This is real income for you. So the random number that we're going to use today shall be $200,000 or $200,000. And if you lose $2 million, you've lost 10 years of your retirement. You've lost 10 years of your freedom. Once again, this could be the difference of you taking a vacation on the beach or buying a house on the beach. This could be the difference between you going to Europe occasionally or going to Europe every year, if that's what you decide to do. My version of retirement's not yours, right? My version is to never wear shoes again and never, ever, 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 ever see the snow. And if by chance it's sunny 365 days a year, about 85 degrees, perfect, right? You pick your version. But what you don't want is you don't want a thin bench, because what may happen in version number 2 is they go, okay, we'll give you the multiple. We'll give you 6 times what you're asking for, but you're going to get working at the desk. We're going to bring you back. And you know what? You're not going to be the boss in charge anymore. You're going to answer to your number 1. Like, you want to talk about that's uncomfortable? That should light a fire under your butt to not have to work under the person that you trained. You may have a really good relationship, but I'm going to share something with you. If you go from owner and then now you're employee underneath the person that you were in charge of, it's a backwards relationship. It can happen. Things can go very well, or they can go really wrong. And a thin bench can mean the difference between you getting the maximum multiple or close to the maximum multiple or being maximum penalized. And message from your sponsor, Scott Sylvan Bell. That's me. If you're getting value from this episode, here's how to go deeper. First, subscribe to my weekly newsletter, The Party, at scottsylvanbell.com. That's where I share the strategies, frameworks, and case studies I don't release anywhere else. You'll get one actionable insight every week you can implement inside your business immediately. Second, while you're on the site, download the complete Sell Framework, Scale Framework, and Drivers Test, all free with scoring guides, worksheets, and step-by-step implementation checklist. These are the same frameworks I use with $10 million to $250 million companies to build systematic revenue, scale operations, and maximize enterprise value. Go to scottsylvanbell.com right now, subscribe to the newsletter, grab the frameworks, and let's keep building companies that command maximum multiples. Let's get going. There's a secondary consequence that we have to talk about, and it comes down to deal certainty. So the management team, it just doesn't affect the price. It affects like the velocity of the deal and the time on the deal. So deals, they can die right after an LOI, and it can come from the bench not being deep enough, not being prepared, not being able to answer questions, not being able to work through common problems. A buyer gets excited about the number, signs a letter of intent, then meets the team, and they're like, no way. There's something wrong here. Excel Eddie is really good at this. Excel Edwina, they're so good at this, they spell Excel with 2 L's, okay? And they're like, hey, this founder, this owner is wearing a costume, and it stalls momentum. I've seen this happen. The deal is on the table, the conversation happens, and then the buyer side, everybody gets together, and what did you see? Well, I saw that the manager really wasn't prepared. I saw that it looked like people were kicking each other under the table. I saw that everything was rehearsed, but rehearsed the wrong way, right? They didn't have enough information. They gave information, but they didn't give enough. They came like right to the answer of saying what needed to be said, but then they didn't say what needed to be said. They gave 50% of what was needed. And so that internal committee, they go, okay, we got a ding here, we got a dent here, and we got a full-on accident right over here. And so it's a time horizon. You said, hey, we've got 90 days on this letter of intent, and all of a sudden it comes to a grinding halt. Now, there's something that happens when you go to sell a business, and in your mind, you're like, we're going to close in 90 days. At day 45, you start getting anxious. At day 90, you start panicking. This is something that sellers go through, is that there are emotions that you go through. Let's say that you're going to take a trip at the end of the month, and you get super stoked about it. You're like, hey, I'm psyched, I'm stoked, I'm going to be going on this trip. And your brain's like, okay, in 30 days, I'm going on this trip. I got to have 27 things done. And then the plan falls through. It's like, okay, now I'm disappointed, and I went through all that work, I went through all that effort, and there might be some anxiety. The same thing can happen when you're on LOI, and the buyer's like, there's a problem here. This company under the hood, duct tape, baling wire, bubble gum, shoestrings, it's being held together, and the deal can die. And so in your mind, you're like, 90 days from here, I was supposed to buy a house on the beach. 90 days from here, I was going to go to the dealership and buy a brand new car. 90 days from here, I was going to have all my debt paid off. Whatever your version of 90 days out from the company being sold is, that may disappear. And that is not a good experience to have. It's tough. I've seen people go through this on a few occasions where they're like, they've checked out. Like in their mind, they're like, this thing's done. It's sold. And then they meet with the team and they're like, not today. Not going to happen today. There's a ripple effect on a bad bench score when your private equity or your investor or your buyer group scores for you and gives you the score. Because they're like, okay, well, we have a team, but now we need to bring in another team to cover for the exit, for what isn't around. Because PE, private investors, they're not going to come in and run your day-to-day business. Your people are. I want to talk to you about integration risk. Integration risk is this. If you don't know what integration is, we're going to go over it. Integration is you have a company, you have processes, you sell to a new company, and they have processes. Well, something has to bridge the gap. Like your SOPs may be better, but hey, we're gonna use the ones that we have. Because, well, we've got 85 companies in our portfolio, and we're not going to change the way that it is for you. Sure, it may look good and we may change to that. We will hold that in the future. But when it comes down to it, you want to be that A+ company when somebody comes to you and you're like, hey, I'm ready to sell. They're fantastic. We're going to take you. We like it. We love it. We want some more of it. Let's get going. A thin bench starts reducing your buyer pool. The M&A world is super small. Let's just, we're going to give you a random number. Let's just say for pretends that there's 20,000 people in the M&A world. That means that roughly there's 10,000 deals for every person that's in the M&A world. Okay. They talk, they have conversations. They say, ooh, there's companies in the town for you to stay away from. There's nightmare situations underneath the hood. Like I looked, I can't tell you the name of the company, but they are in this area, in this part of the world. Don't do business with them. The founder is crazy. Right? It happens. And so sometimes what will happen is that conversation will lead to a vulture, a vampire, a werewolf, where they know that they can get the company for as long after a deal didn't go through. Like people talk, even it happens. It happens, and you don't want it to happen. You want the highest multiple you get for your business. You want to use leverage for your management team. You want to be able to leverage and say, I've got the best management team in the business, in the industry, in the sector. And the reason I know that is because they can perform, and here's what we've done. I'm a huge fan of red team exercises. One of my favorite exercises to do is to put situations on index cards and deal them out like a deck of cards. And that is the playbook that they're running for that meeting or even for that day. Can't get a hold of the owner, right? Owner's gone. Owner is in the air. Owner can't answer the phone. Owner is in the hospital. And these three situations, what's the worst situation that could happen in your business right now? This is the worst situation that can happen. That's what the playbook that you run. Because if your team can live through that, you're going to have a chance at a higher multiple. If your team can't live through it, it could be a ding dent, could be worse. So like, Scott, come on, you built the nightmare scenario for me. What's the fix? Well, the fix number one is in systems. It's decision authority matrix and decision bands. So if you don't know what that is, I'll give it to you. Let's say that you have a general manager or an ops manager. They can make a decision up to $100,000, right? Let's say that you have a manager underneath them. They can make a hiring decision. They can make a decision up to $25,000. Let's say that you have a supervisor. They can make a certain set of decisions, and it's all done by band, right? And in rare situations, here's what can happen. You also want to have who can negotiate with vendors and how much they can negotiate for, whether it's deferred payments, whether it's price. And in this management level, there should be a matrix, and where are the boundaries, and who holds the keys, and what's the scorecard. And this is not something that's meant to be built in an hour. This is something that's meant for you to take some time. Like where did the decisions come from? Like if I can't get a hold of the ops manager, who's the next person down? Can't get a hold of the general manager, who's the next person down? Supervisor, and allow for them to make decisions and give them real world. Like if you're worried, like, oh, they're going to make a bad decision, then start having decision meetings with your team. How would you make this decision? Right? One of my favorite things to tell anybody that I work with is don't let somebody come to you and say, hey, I got a problem. They got to come to you with 3 solutions. And they may not be the right solutions, but if you're mentoring somebody to take a role or somebody's being mentored, you would explain, like, this is why we chose this one. Or if you've got a better version, defend it. Tell me what your version is. Fix number 2 is going to come down to people. Black box Bob, black box Betty, protected Pete, protected Penelope. And you want to know the critical knowledge and the critical relationships that they have. And you want to get this documented, not just the obvious ones. You're going to have to dig in and have some conversations and look. This is not the easiest thing to fix. I'm just going to let you know this one's work. This one's work and effort, because most of the time, protective Pete, protective Penelope, black box Bob, black box Betty are a family member, somebody who's really liked at the company, somebody who slid into a position when nobody else could, or they're just a friend or a family member. And when you have these dimensions, people start going, I can't, Pete, Penelope, Bob, Betty, they've been around forever. They're a cousin, they're a relative. It could be a parent. I've seen this happen as a parent. But you need to figure out a knowledge transfer program and document what they know and cross-train and back up. You need the documentation so it's recognizable for replacement. And once again, you may have some decisions to make. You may have to spend some money to have them stay at home for 3 months. You might send them on a trip or on a vacation, or they may no longer work for you. You've really got to have an honest conversation with yourself and your management team about making sure that everything's taken care of. Let's just say you don't want to sell, okay? Black Box Bob, Black Box Betty, Protected Pete, Protected Penelope, they make it hard on the rest of your team because they're a choke point. They're a bottleneck. Most bottlenecks start at the top. In this case, this bottleneck is going to be the thing that holds you back because nobody wants to have the tough conversation. But somebody's got to have the moral courage. I'll tell you flat out, something has to be done. You either have the conversation with them and they change. Small chance, it happens. You pay them to not come in. You pay them to go on a trip. Or you ask them to leave. Like, we're going to use first principle thinking. There's only 3 things that can be done here. What you don't want is to lose valuation because they didn't want to help. They're not going to come back and give you money. They're not, right? You sell the company, they're going to be bitter. They're going to be upset. They're going to say, I knew you were going to sell. That's why I didn't want to tell you anything. And let's just say you missed a multiple. You missed $2 million. You left $2 million on the table because there was an employee that didn't want to play ball. That's a tough conversation to have at a swimming pool. That's a tough conversation to have at a barbecue. That's a tough conversation to have like with a coach, with a mentor. That's a tough conversation to wake up in the middle of the night and go, I could probably get another 2 million for my company, 3 million, I'm giving you random numbers. I don't know this for certain, right? 2 million, 3 million, 10 million, whatever the number happens to be. If we can deal with Black Box Bob or Black Box Betty or Protected Pete or Protected Penelope, they might be the same person. They're typically in a key position. A lot of times they're in accounting, right? They're just going to say there's something about accounting that really attracts this group of people. And you may be shaking your head like, oh my goodness, how did Scott know? Because I've met them. I've met this version of somebody multiple times. And I look and I'm like, oh my goodness, we got Black Box Betty. Black Box Betty doesn't want to have the conversation. She's going to lock everything down, right? Same conversation in a meeting. This is the conversation in a meeting. I'll get to it. I'm too busy. Nope, I can't show anybody how to do it. I'm just swamped. I really wish that I could. And like, if you try to bring in fractional help, they'll find every reason on the planet to not have fractional help. Nope, you don't need to do that. Like, anytime that you have a key position and someone's like, you don't need to do that when you're talking about bringing in fractional help, it's a sign. I'm pointing to the sky. It is a freaking sign from the business gods. You've got to bring somebody in. You got to figure out their job. You got to figure out their role. You don't have to, okay? I highly encourage you to. Because they're one bad day away from quitting. They're one bad day away from having a heart attack. They're one bad day away from a car accident. And then you're really in a tough position because you couldn't extract information from them. I have seen Black Box Bob or Black Box Betty play this game. Like, if you're gonna bring somebody in, I'm gonna quit. And they were kept in a position for 9 extra months. That's 9 extra months of revenue they could have had. That's 9 extra months of preparation they could have had. And they were a big giant crybaby. Big giant crybaby. I encourage you, if you have a Black Box Bob, a Black Box Betty, a Protected Pete, Protected Penelope, figure out a way to extract that information and have it work to your favor, because you don't want it to hold back the bench. You don't want it to hold back your management team knows. Like, if you go to your management team right now and you're like, who on the team hoards information and won't give it? Like, they will point fingers over there in the corner. Well, why aren't we doing anything about it? Well, they're difficult to deal with. Well, they've been here for a while. Well, they're a family member. I'm really harping on this for a reason, because your bench may be hamstrung by the people that are on the team beneath them that are holding them back on purpose so that they can't get fired or can't get asked to leave. Fix number 3 is going to be documentation. And this is going to be a dossier about each management member. Like, what is their decision band? What's their succession depth? What are the ways that they make decisions? What's their performance history? Do they have retention agreements? You want to have a profile on each individual person so that when the new owner that wants to buy you comes in, private equity or investment group, and they go, hey, we got a data room ready. Like, let me walk you through all the documents. I got a Titan thesis. Like, what can be resolved without a founder? Put some of the problems in there that they've resolved and the solutions they came up with. Because what's documented is transferable. And if it's transferable, it's valuable. A buyer who opens your data room and finds leadership files with Documented independence evidence isn't looking at a risk. They're like, this is a freaking asset. We should be doing this across our business lines. It works to your favor 99% of the time. Occasionally, one bad day, it doesn't. But I'll take those odds any day of the week. All right, so you want to build out these dossiers. You want some evidence. You're going to track decision independence ratios. What significant decisions can be made and how are they made by your team without you, without any sort of escalation? And can you measure that monthly? There could be a document that says, like, hey, here's the things that we ran into. Here's the problems that we faced. Here's the number of critical roles that we trained or tested with backup or red team exercises that we ran through, scenarios that we ran through, pricing. Like if you're like, hey, Scott, what are some of the scenarios? Well, you got pricing. You've got a bad event that happens. Your name gets dragged through the mud. You've got a key person that leaves. You have somebody who has an unfortunate event and gets in a car accident or gets hurt. You just think of the worst scenarios. And those are things that you can say, we've planned for these. We've had conversations. We ran drills. If you're 5 years out and you do this once a quarter, you've got 20 opportunities. If you're 5 years out and you do it once a month, you got 60 opportunities. Right? Start thinking like, if you go and you say, hey, listen, brand new manager, for the last 2 years, we've been having red team exercises and we've documented and recorded everything. This is the way that we do things. This is the way we do them. And they go, great. Now they have documentation to go. They have history to read too. This just isn't about sales. This is about employee retention. Like for me, if someone goes, hey, Scott, do you want to be a manager? And I'm like, yeah, I want to be a manager. And they came to me and they go, hey, we've got 5 years of history. We would love for you to check on how we made decisions and red team exercises we put against the team. I'd be like, heck yeah, that's freaking awesome. I'm not trying to start over and build a brand new shinier wheel. I've already got one. When investors come in, they pay for proof. And a management team that's got 80% decision independence ratio, low turnover, and a documented track record of operations without the founder is the single most valuable non-financial asset in your data room. Like this makes you that you can go after that Titan thesis or that maximum multiple and really win when it comes to a sell. So you got to self-test. You're going to run a meeting in your head. A buyer sits down with your leadership team without you, and they ask 3 questions. Walk me through the revenue model and explain why it's defensible. They're like, tell me about the rev. Tell me about the model. 2, what's the biggest operational risk in the business right now and what's being done about it? 3, if the founder left in 90 days, what breaks first, second, and third? And be honest about your team answers. Who needs help? Who may not be the right person on the team these days? And if any of these questions produce silence, confusion, frustration, or they, in their head, I'm going to have to check with the owner, your bench score is speaking and it's low. And that meeting is going to come for you whether you're prepared or not, whether you decide to sell or not. Like these activities really help you have a more profitable and more productive company. Some of this may come down to the way that you mentor. I'm going to give you a strategy that you can use. It doesn't have to be the strategy, okay? So pick a leader on your team and go to them and say, I've got a decision that I want you to make. And I want you to think about it. I want you to document it. I want you to work through it. And not a small one that matters. It could be pricing authority, a hiring decision, a letting somebody go decision, a client escalation that you would normally handle, and give them the authority. And say, listen, here is your role. Here is your responsibility. I want to see what you can do. You come up with your answers, come up with 3 solutions, and I want you to present the best one to me. I want you to present the one that you feel is going to be the best for the company, for the organization. And you have X amount of time to get this done. You've got 72 hours. Because when we have to make decisions, we don't always have the luxury of 72 hours. We typically have like 30 minutes or 2 minutes. And then so what happens over time is you start pulling back and like, okay, we're gonna have a conversation. You need to make a decision. You're going to make the decision for me. And here's what's going to happen is you have 1 hour to make this decision. And we're going to go with your decision. But you're going to have to explain to me how you got there. That's a possibility. I'm not saying you have to do it. But if you want to build a big, better, awesomer bench, with more capabilities, more talents, and more strategies, then what it's going to take is you doing things differently than were done before. I highly encourage you to take a look at your team, right? Who are the players that really belong? Who is Black Box Bob? Who's Black Box Betty? Who's Protected Peep? Who's Protected Penelope? And how do we get their processes documented? Because last on this, they're holding back your management team. Your management team can't make decisions properly with somebody who's holding back information or somebody who's not allowing for something to be done. I encourage you to keep building your business, whether you're preparing to sell it or not. 38. Mahalo for listening to the Scott Sylvan Bell Business Growth and Exit Strategy podcast. Here's what's available to you right now. First, subscribe to this podcast so you get every framework we release. Second, visit scottsylvanbell.com to access the Sell Framework, Scale Framework, and Driver Test. All free with complete scoring guides and implementation worksheets. Third, subscribe to my weekly newsletter, The Party, where I break down strategies and frameworks you won't find anywhere else with one actionable insight every week. Go to scottsylvanbell.com and enter your email. And if this episode added value, share it with another business owner building a $10 million to $250 million company. Until next time, keep building companies that command maximum multiples. Aloha.